Hi everyone, welcome to this DIP Hangout on real-time change. With me is our host for this Hangout, LJ Leslie John Pullman. Hello, Leslie.
Hi everyone.
So we're going to be discussing a topic that we already discussed in our previous Hangout, but unfortunately the audio of that Hangout was not very good, so we are basically doing another run of it. Because real-time change is quite an important topic and something very important to discuss when it comes to the process of self-change. Because real-time change is, real-time change. It's real. It's where you make your process of change real. So, for example, making your process of change real means that you go from all the steps that you take to prepare your process, which is your writing, your self-forgiveness, your breathing, your self-corrective statements, which is all the preparing work for self-change, and you start living that in your physical reality. So LJ, can you share a little bit about how you personally have walked your process of real-time change?
Well, for me, it was my process to a point has been sped up to a point because of burnout, because he assisted us in showing Sarita and I how to immediately move into that point of real-time change, where it's a point of just working with the point and changing who you are within it and moving forward from there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's where we didn't have to develop that point as much because burnout assisted us in developing it. So we just got to a foster point, to an easier way of doing it because of how we were raised, so to speak.
So how would you say he did that? Like how you were raised, how did that differ from how most people are raised in this world? And how did that assist you to walk your real-time process for real-time change faster or different from most people walking process?
Well, generally speaking, just because of the point that he would show us how to work with information. If he did something, he would show us. If we talked to him about something, he would take it apart and show us how to look at points in a broader way. So not just be limited by a specific idea or belief or perception, but always look at everything and consider it from as many possible ways that we could actually see at that stage. And he would assist us in opening up different levels or different dimensions of what we were looking at to see how points worked and the outflows of certain decisions and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And showing how to implement that within ourselves.
Yeah. So can you maybe give an example of that? Like an example of him showing you how a point works in its multi-dimensional or multi-layered facets.
Well, I'm trying to look for a specific point. It's like...
Well, is it like, for instance, when you were in an emotional experience, a reaction towards something, or?
Yeah, he would, for that instance at least, he would assist us in seeing why we were reacting, what we were reacting towards, and assist us in seeing that point quite simply of why it was completely pointless and why it was just making, well, more why it was just us making life more difficult for ourselves.
Yeah.
But it was also that point of he would allow us to make the choice for ourselves and to suffer the consequences or to see the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever point, he would open it up and he would show us. It's like, look, this is what's probably going to happen because of what you're doing now. So You know, you can see it, you can look at it, and then just choose which way are you going to go. You're going to go the easy way or the difficult way, quite simply put. The one full of consequences, or the one you are more standing as the directive principle.
Yeah. So it's basically like assisting you to step out of your own frame of mind in that moment, which would be your emotional reaction or your thought that you're having about the situation.
Yeah.
To see things in a broader perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to how buddies would assist you with your points when you're walking DIP. It's that point of just looking at it from the outside, not staying stuck in the energy.
Yeah.
So it's just assisting with giving that point. But I think the main point was that since it happened with us since we were children, we integrated it more into ourselves because that was our daily lives, so to speak, is looking at that point from a young age. Always looking at as much as possible is what he would show us.
Yeah.
So it was easier for us to integrate that point.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because for us walking process, meaning, you know, doing our writing where we investigate our own reactions, and doing our self-forgiveness where we release our reactions and assist and support ourselves to kind of see beyond our own limited way of seeing things. That's basically where we are doing the same thing as what Bernard did for you guys.
Yeah.
Which is like, you know, assisting and supporting ourselves to just be able to drop what's going on inside of ourselves for a moment and just step out of that and seeing situations in a broader context and just seeing more dimensions of what's really involved in certain situations.
Yeah.
You know,
And
so,
seeing what choices are available to you.
yeah, and seeing like what is an alternative from like
The energetic.
reacting emotionally, and what if I don't react emotionally and rather just do what I know I should be doing in this situation, like what I know is actually the best way to handle this situation. So, I mean, yeah, it would make sense that since he did that for you guys when you were children, that, you know, you'd already have that kind of basic platform inside of yourself of how you approach situations, which is within the consideration of like, I may be reacting emotionally, but I have the ability to step out of it and just see the situation with more clarity.
Yeah. And in terms of the real-time change point, that's simply what it is being able to step out of the emotional reaction, look at it, investigate the whole point, open it up, and decide to let it go and move forward and stand as a directive principle, or to continue in the energy. Because in every emotional reaction, that's the point that it comes to is, are you going to change in this moment, or are you going to fall for the energy? And everyone's felt that moment of change. It happened. I mean, you can feel it where you see, okay, I'm heading for something not cool here. You know, something bad is going to happen if I keep doing this, but I don't think I know any other way. So instead of looking if there is another way, you're going to continue down that path because that's your habit.
Yeah.
So that's a point that you need to break, is that, and look at and open up for yourself. And with real-time change, it's really in the moment. When you see it, you're in a reaction, you look at it and you see, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing. Okay. So in that moment, you can decide to breathe, and through breath, let go of the energy and stop following it, and then see what is the most, what's the best option you see in terms of how to move forward. Where do you stand as the direct principle for yourself in that moment?
Yeah. So, but that point where you're able to do that in the moment, breathe, look at the reaction, step out of it, make a decisive, make a decision on what's the best course of action, you'd already have to have, developed a certain level of awareness in relation to what you're actually dealing with inside of yourself. Not to mention the fact that, what you might be experiencing in that moment isn't necessarily reality. Because sometimes it's like you can really be in a reaction where you really fully believe inside of yourself, like, I'm right to react like this and to speak these words and to say these things, and it just plays out completely. So I found with myself that if I don't afterwards, because I mean, in all honesty with myself, I can see it's a reaction. I was angry, even though in my mind or in myself, I may feel justified and I may feel like, I was right. But I can still see it was just a reaction.
Yeah.
So,
and you could have directed it better without going into the anger energy.
mhm.
And for instance, with anger, attacking the other person in that situation.
Yeah. So, but for me, I know that sometimes I would have to do my writing and I would have to just apply the self-forgiveness just to firstly come down from that reaction so that I'm able to assist and support myself to maybe see beyond my own reaction, maybe see how I could have done things differently. But that takes quite a bit of effort, and that takes that whole kind of process of writing and doing self-forgiveness and doing your self-corrective statements, where you're kind of teaching yourself to create a space inside of yourself where you can slow down and where you can, before going into a reaction, say, whoa, is this really where I want to go? So that's why that process of writing and self-forgiveness and self-corrective statements is important to create that space.
Yeah, and to for another point, I mean, in terms of real-time change, sorry, you'll find that if you are capable of doing it, if you are capable of slowing yourself down and changing in a moment and letting go of the reaction, that sometimes you won't be, because there'll be, so to speak, almost bigger points that's just more ingrained habits, so to speak, of following the energy. And for those points, you will still have to write. And in the beginning, it is the best way. Writing it out is the process of slowing down and looking at what you're experiencing. And with writing it out, it's just giving yourself the opportunity to look at everything. Because with real-time change, you do that in the moment because you have done it before, and you can see correlations within points. You can see how something is similar to another point, so you can already see what's going to happen just because you already see so much of yourself. So in the beginning, you have to first write everything out, walk the process, do the self-forgiveness and the self-corrective statements to open up, let go, and to correct yourself. And through that, you are training yourself for real-time change, for that process of being able to almost do it all automatically. And
However, I would say that real-time change, it requires that awareness of what you're doing, but it also requires like that decision, to not allow a pattern to play out again, because I found that the tendency exists to, even though you might have all the awareness you need in relation to how a point exists, to still go into it when it comes up, because it's like, it just feels so good sometimes to react. And a good example is points like procrastination, or points like distraction, or like these little addiction points that you are trying to change, but that you keep falling into, like smoking, or just kind of passing time with entertainment, or whatever it is you want to change about yourself. Where it's like you did all the writing and you have that space inside of yourself of knowing what you're doing, but then you still need your actual decisive action in the moment.
That's the directive principle. It's if you have to decide to change. And the other point is, it's not a once-off decision. It's a decision that you'll make again and again and again, because the point will keep coming up, because you've created it as a habit. You've designed it to be a part of yourself, for instance, like eating a lot of sugar or smoking, whatever. So if you want to change it, and you see you keep falling in that habit, you can't just now say, I'm never going to do it again, because you can't make a statement like that at this moment, because you have to actually show yourself that you're not going to do it again. And you only show yourself that you're not going to do it again by not doing it again. Almost. So every time that desire or that habit or the pattern comes up, basically, you have to decide again, are you going to fall, or are you going to stick with the directive principle? And every time you have to show yourself what it is that's happening on both sides, what's happening on the energetic side and what's happening in the directive principle. What is it that you're doing? What is it that you're deciding? Or what is it that you're going to allow if you do not decide to stay with the directive principle, for instance? So every time those points come up, you have to make a decision one way or the other. The only point with the awareness is what allows you to see when you make that decision. It's that point of allowing yourself to see that.
Yeah.
So once you've developed that, then you can actually see, okay, here I decided to fall in the energy. You look at why you did that, and you can write it out however you prefer looking at the point. You look at why you decided to fall in the energy. Then the next time that same point, that same pattern comes up, you'll be able to see, okay, so I fell last time because of so-and-so reason. This time I'm going to stick with the directive principle.
Yeah.
So every time you fall, you learn more about the point you're falling in. So it's not a bad thing to fall. It's literally the only way you will learn from your mistakes. So, I mean, opening up a point will show you as much as you see as you allow yourself to see. And especially now with the points that are so ingrained, it's a long process of creating these points. So it's going to be a process to remove them at the same time. So you have to look at every time that this pattern comes up, you make the decision. And if you do fall, it's okay. You learn, you see why you fell, and then you don't fall the same way again. And that's also a decision that you have to decide to not fall again the same way. Because you will follow your basic programming, so to speak. Your basic ingrained points is to keep falling in the energy because it feels so good, because it's easy. It's the easy way out. But also the other thing you have to consider in those moments is it looks like the easy way out, but if you look at it long term, it's not sustainable. Quite simply put, I mean, it's the easier way right now, but later on you're going to suffer because of what you chose here. So you have to, in those moments, consider that the broader picture, the bigger picture, basically.
Yeah. So it's basically just looking at things from a common sense perspective, which means just looking at it realistically, because, that brings up a good point of why it is often I find that you can feel like you're stuck in a point, like you're stuck in a pattern and you keep falling in it and you don't know why you can't change it, and where you get to a point of just feeling completely desperate or hopeless or just giving up in relation to something because you've kind of accepted this idea that I can't transcend this point anyways, I can't change this point, it is me, but what I found is that, that the reason for not moving in those instances, in changing something, is actually because there are certain self-sabotaging mechanisms that are playing out in your mind, where you're actually making it a lot more difficult for yourself deliberately to be able to change a point, simply due to how you're looking at things. For instance, instead of looking at it realistically, like, okay, I may fall, or I may have fallen in this point now, but that doesn't mean I'm a failure. That just means that there's something I still have to look at. Or it just means that, I just have to let go of that moment and move on and keep going, because I know that if I set my mind to changing this point will change. That is what will happen, because I have the capacity and the ability to do so. So if I just keep moving, it will change. So instead of looking at a point in that way, which is the realistic way, we tend to look at it from like, oh my God, I failed. I'm a fucking failure. Sorry for my language. Like we judge ourselves and we have these ideas that I'm supposed to just change my addiction like that. And we don't look at it realistically. For instance, I've created this pattern over years of, programming myself into doing this. So it's going to take a long time for me to step out of it. But I will be able to do it if I just keep going, So there's so many of those perceptions that we have, of reality, where we make it difficult for ourselves to change something just because we're not looking at things realistically. We're not like basically taking it easy on ourselves.
And that's also what tends to happen is you keep yourself in a sort of a pity spiral where you judge yourself and you fall. So let's say you fall. It's, oh no, crap, I fell. And you just keep going deeper and deeper into how much you hate yourself and how terrible you are because you fell this time. And you just keep going like that. And you distract yourself and you don't allow yourself to see that you fell again, for instance. And then afterwards you look back and like, oh crap, I actually fell again. Oh no, see, this is how terrible I am. I keep proving to myself how terrible I am. So I'm going to make, you keep distracting yourself in that little cycle, in that little spiral of how terrible you are. And you don't actually see those moments of change until later. And then you realize that you missed another one. And you're like, oh no, oh my God. And it just keeps going and going. And quite simply in those moments, you just have to stop. Just stop judging yourself and then look at the point and say, okay, yeah, I fell however many times. Now I'm going to change. Stop following that cycle of self-judgment, of self-hate, basically, self-destruction, because that's all it is. It's a distraction from what is actually going on, what points you're looking at, what points you're facing. And it's it is the easy way out still, to follow that little self-pity spiral, because it's easier to follow the pattern than it is to actually decide to change and push yourself to change. That's what you think. That's what you see. That's your idea. And that's only because you've been doing it so long. That's a simple point. Once you actually change a point, you look back at it and you're like, why did it take me so long?
And I mean, sometimes maybe the reason why you're not changing is just because you have to first walk through all the excess baggage that you have around the point, like all your judgments, your self-beliefs, all those beliefs like, I can't change this point, it's impossible for me to change this point, rehashing the past, like, look at all the times I've fallen, judging yourself, fear of failure, judging the point itself, like it's something bad that I did this, all those kind of points that are where you're limiting yourself from being able to change, where you just first have to source all of that and walk through that before you can actually get to the real change of the point. And then you might even realize that changing the actual point is way easier than you initially thought it was. It might just be one decision in one moment. And just because you were able to drop all of those judgments you had about it, you just suddenly realized that you had all this time made this point so much more of a burden for yourself than it actually in fact is. I see we have quite a few questions or comments from June. Why do we need to change? What do we need to change? And what is the consequence of not changing? Those are good questions. But a little bit broad. So,
well, simply in terms of why do we need to change? Well, if you consider that point of you keep falling, when you go into a reaction of anger, for instance, if you go into a reaction of anger and you're having a fight with someone, afterwards you'll see there was not actually any purpose to the fight. You'll be able to see that you could have had this conversation with this person without fighting if you hadn't have gone into the reaction, for instance. So that's one point of why do we need to change. So you don't have to go into the consequences fall through the consequences of whatever it is that your reactions cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not a point of we have to change in terms of, because that might also be like a point of judgment, you know, like I have to change because this is bad. Like I'm doing something bad, therefore I have to change. Self-change is, again, it's like from a realistic, practical perspective. It's just looking at all the things that you do in your life, or all the things that's happening and that's existing in the world that are just not practical, that can be better. So it's just a matter of like improving yourself. It's a matter of doing what's best for yourself, which is self-development, self-improvement, like perfecting yourself in a way so that you can live as the best version of yourself. What do we need to change? Which I'd say is basically the same. What is the consequence of not changing?
Well, simplistically, for the instance of anger, if you keep falling into reactions of anger, then you're usually going to distance yourself from other people. You're going to make relationships and communication with other people more difficult, because they're going to assume you're angry all the time. And that can also lead to physical problems with your body. You can have heart trouble because of the stress you put on your body through that energy, following that energy of anger, where you tighten your muscles and your whole body just clenches like that. And that point recurring over and over and over eventually leads to a point of physical consequence, for instance. And I mean, you can really go quite broad with it. So it depends on the situation, but usually if you look at a situation, you can see if there is a consequence or not to change. And really, in terms of, the point is looking at everything that you do and see, if I do change this point, I will be able to live a better life. I will be able to lead a better life, as well as for myself, as well as for other people, the people around me. If I'm not constantly angry and I'm actually open, humble, and able to communicate with them, then I can have real conversations with people where it's not something with energy only, where I can actually consider points together with someone without going into an energetic reaction.
Yeah. So, and the last question, anger and heart trouble, yes. Cool. How do I spot the point? Meaning the point to change, I'm assuming. How do I spot the point that I need to change?
Wow. For sorry. If you, for instance, let's stick with the anger point. And for instance, looking at anger, you can usually see afterwards that you went into an energetic reaction, or while you're in the reaction. Let's go there. If you look at when you're in a reaction, you can usually, there is a moment where you realize that you're in a reaction, even if you're not completely sure. It'll be sorry, where you can actually feel it in your body. For anger, it's almost a clenching of the muscles. It's what I experience for myself is a tightening of my chest, and I usually move more into an aggressive posture. For instance, from my experience with anger, then I tend to become more aggressive. I speak louder. I tend to not really hear what other people are saying, and I just want to get my point across. And I keep fighting and not really hearing anything other than, pushing my point. That's what I focus on. I can't slow down. I can't slow myself down in terms of anger. It's really, I just, keep going in that tightening and clenching and getting tighter and fighting and push. And then you realize that you're not actually hearing and considering everything. You're not being humble in that moment. So that's what I would that's how I experience anger. And if in that moment I can see myself really going into this energy where my body's tightening, I'm moving more aggressively, I'm talking louder, or I can feel the energy, really the heat coursing through my body, then I can see, okay, I'm in an energy, I'm really deep in an anger reaction right now. I didn't even see myself go in. Then I just take a breath. I'm like, okay, look at what's happening, stop myself from following the anger, and choose directed principle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from my experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when you're in an emotional reaction, especially anger, because it's so obvious, then it is the most obvious point to spot, and then you just know, this is a reaction. So then you're dealing with something inside of yourself. So I mean, often your thoughts will be telling you that you are right when it comes to anger, especially, like, you're always right. You're always the one who who sees it the right way, and everybody else is wrong, and you are completely justified. But the fact that you are experiencing this emotion inside of yourself, that your body is tense, that you are in this, that there's thoughts running around in your mind, and you're like moving really fast inside of yourself, that means there's something going on. There's something you need to look at. There's a problem inside of yourself because you are not relaxed. You are not existing in a calm, relaxed way, which is what is best for you on a mind level and body level, and just for you as a being. But then there are also points like feelings, which are also consequential, because the problem with feelings is sometimes that you won't actually spot them because they feel nice, and sometimes you can just be in a certain feeling and not question it because it feels nice, and because you're like, well, why should I question this? Why is this bad? Why should I change this? But then comes things like headaches. With feelings, with myself, sometimes I'll only notice that I need to look at a certain feeling experience because there's a physical consequence attached to it, like headaches, which means that I've been participating a lot in daydreaming or fantasizing or just wondering about things in my mind. So then that kind of creates this compounded layer in my mind, which then manifests as headaches or just feeling uncomfortable in my body, or tense in my body when I've been walking around in this energy of hastiness, and where you kind of you're getting a lot of stuff done, but you're actually in the background inside of yourself, you're really stressed out, but you're not noticing it because it's this energy that makes you feel energetic and motivated. But then come things like headaches and things like just discomfort in your body, or burnout, or depression, which would be the consequence of the feelings. So that then would be the way to spot the actual problem, which is the feeling energy and the thoughts related to that.
Yeah, in terms of feelings, and usually, generally speaking, when you're following an energy, when you're working with energy, especially in terms of motivation or so on and so forth, you'll notice a point where it's you get really hyped up about something and you'll follow it through for a moment. But once the energy runs out, the motivation runs out. It's not you deciding to do something and pushing it through and following it through. It's you following an energy, then the energy runs out, and then the point falls because there's nothing motivating it anymore.
Yeah.
It was never a choice that you made. You didn't push yourself to do this. You were following an energy, for instance.
Yeah, that's also sometimes, how I source the point of that there's actually a feeling I need to look at when I go through points like disappointment or despair or depression, which will usually be, if I look back, then I'll see that, oh, the previous days I've actually been thinking a lot about this, or I've been kind of moving myself in this feeling energy, and now it kind of crashed. And now I feel depressed and down and stuff like that. So an anger point can be like your voice getting louder.
Well, yes. That's what I experience, at least. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah, but with this one, there can be a danger to perceive that when and if your voice gets louder, then you are in anger, which isn't always the case. Sometimes you can use your voice and make your voice louder to just direct a situation, or because it's something that's needed in a certain situation, without actually implying that you are angry and that there's something wrong or that you need to change.
Yeah, look, generally speaking, what I would suggest is you really have to look at yourself self-honestly and look at how you go through points. Look at when you know you've been in a reaction. Look at everything you did physically and otherwise. That gives you clues as to the next time to tell you that you're in a reaction. But you can, as you said, you can't generally say your voice gets louder means you're angry, because it could mean you're scared and you're just trying to make everyone else go away by shouting, for instance. There's so many different things, physical triggers. So it's really from person to person. So you have to look at what it is you yourself that you experience when you're in a reaction, and you use that to assist yourself in seeing and catching the next time you're in a reaction, because it makes it more visible to you. If you see what you did in the past, you can predict next time I'm in a reaction, this is the possible points, because I'm aware of these points.
My voice gets louder when someone is saying something to debunk what I'm saying. I know I have a point, so then I'm angry.
Well, you can't say definitely, June. I mean, you really need like a lot more context, basically, for each specific instance. I mean, as I said, I would really suggest you just look at you know what's simplest is writing out the event, the whole memory that you have of this moment, the specific one, whatever one comes to the forefront of your mind. Write the whole memory out and try and be as specific as possible as to what you experienced and what you what physical changes you noticed, if you really want to see what it was that you were doing.
So this is one point, and I have to look at other points. Cool, yes. Yeah. Basically. And then a comment from Joanna. In my case, anger can be easily suppressed, where I react by wanting to leave the place or isolate myself. Is it really about self-honesty?
It is really about. It is really about self-honesty.
It is really about self-honesty. Yes. Yes, like you can't place certain parameters on, this is what you have to look out for when you're angry, because so many people have so many different ways to, because I myself also rarely express my anger. So I might seem like someone who is more quiet, so if I use the parameter of when I am loud, then I'm angry, then apparently I'm never angry. But in self-honesty, I know that I get angry a lot, but then there's thoughts running in my mind, and then, that's what I have to look out for.
Seething anger.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
The next one.
Writing makes sense. Yeah. That's how you open yourself up. That's how you look inside of yourself. So another comment from June. I can relate to what Joanna said, suppressing anger, which I thought was a change, but it is a way of coping rather than changing. Yeah. That's also a cool point of like self-honesty, like just being honest with what's really going on inside, and not kind of, I suppose, making an assessment of yourself based on how things look, or based on how things appear to be.
What you perceive instead of what's actually following an idea instead of reality, so to speak. So if you're not sure about reality, for instance, then write it out and open it up so that you can give yourself a clearer picture, basically. So you can really look at it self-honestly for yourself.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So those were a lot of very awesome questions.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thanks so much for participating. And it seems that we are at the end of our hangout. Is there anything that you would like to still add?
No, I think if you see anything more, let's do another hangout.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, it's a very interesting point to discuss, because it's what makes process real, is real-time change, and it's something that I know a lot of people struggle with. So the more that we can open it up and really lay it out and discuss it, the more that we can support ourselves and everyone to quantify our process.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you perhaps next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.